I'm sure, yeah. There's supposed to be 5 of us in class, but there are just 3, which is okay.
Okay.
What we did, and only one person was present at the last class, so we're just going to go back and forth. The class last week was to look at vernacular architecture. But the week before, we had already started about David Aradion, who is a Nigerian architect, and we talked a great deal about vernacular architecture, meaning Western architecture. And we looked at all of the things. We read an article, which is already in the syllabus this week, Exploring West Africa's Vernacular Architecture. And it goes around to tell us how Africans build their houses, the architecture of Africans. And since you are a Western trained architect, we would like to find out from you, what is the difference between the way Africans build their houses and the way contemporary architects build theirs? And if you can also give us just a little hint about architecture in South Africa. We've seen a little bit of it, the traditional architecture. And so the whole essence of the level in this class is African humanities, and we're looking at the human beings. And we say that, how could you talk about a person without their building? Where they live, how they live, and how they construct it. That every building talks to a culture. So what we just want you to do, you could do a little bit of introduction of yourself, and then take us as a Western trained architect. What, if a client comes to you, what do they come with, and all of that? So you have the floor. Thank you very much indeed. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I apologize a bit with the mix-up with the timing, and I was going to do a lot of work, but I had some issues, but even with that, I can still go ahead. Please, can you enable me to share my slide?
Okay, all right. I just, I'll make you, okay. Okay. Make co-host. Okay. Yes. All right.
Thank you very much. What do I share? Okay, let me share the entire screen. I'm coming.
All right. Go here.
Okay. Can you see my screen? Just confirm to me what you can see.
Your screen is not up yet.
Okay.
Okay. Did you copy of this one? That was last class assignment. It follows through the assignment for the week before, which is, okay, it came on a minute ago and then it went.
Okay, let me try it again.
Yeah, it showed up a minute ago and then, okay, it's coming on. Yes, Vernacular Architecture, West Africa. All right,
Awesome.
That's it. Okay, I think I know what to do. I'm going to just switch you. Okay. All right, yeah, we're on.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to alternate a bit. Got it? 1 second. I don't know what is happening. I can't see much. Okay, fine.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so if you permit me, I will alternate a bit between my slides. I can even go online to be able to show you and go to some pictures as well. And today we're talking about vernacular architecture from West African perspective. So my name is Taiwo. I'm a professional architect registered in Nigeria and also registered in South Africa. I'm an urbanist and also the built environment professional. So I'm interested in urban issues, in housing issues. And just to give you a bit of background, Please let me know if you can hear me clearly and I can go ahead.
Yes, I can hear you. You're
Okay.
very clear. Yeah.
Thank you. So I remember way back in the 80s, late 80s, and there was this promotion by the United Nations Habitat then, and they were talking about housing for all by the year 2000. And that was, I think, in 1998, thereabout. And they were promoting housing for all, and then I was still a very young chap. I was still in primary school. And I was like, housing for all by the year 2000. Is that something good? And then I was living with an uncle of mine who was a draftsman. So I used to go to site at a very tender age, 7, 8. So, and that was when I decided I want to study architecture. And I was like, way back in Nigeria. So I studied in Ife, and which is about maybe 150 kilometers from Lagos. And sometimes you travel a lot and you see empty land, free land. So I was like, yes, it's good to be an architect. And that was how I decided to study architecture at different levels. And so today, first and foremost, who is an architect? And it's important to understand what an architect is. So we have draftsmen, we have other people in the built environment, we have the quantity surveyors, we have the engineers, we have the draftsmen who are not professional architects, but they can also draw as well. So an architect is someone who designs, who plans housing, who oversees the construction of the housing project at different levels. Some may be at the foundation, some may be at bungalow, some will be at story building, 50-story building, and all of that. And the flip side is architecture, which is actually the act and the science of designing and constructing building. So an architect is the person who is in charge, a mason who does the designing, who does the space allocation, who tells you this is what you need. But beyond the architect, there is actually architecture, which is the act and the design. So beyond designing, there is a need for you to put up the design that you have in mind and make it a reality, which could be made of a different component. There are systems, there are services, your water services, your power services, and all of that. And to answer the main question you asked me, what do architects actually do in the schemes of designing things in the Western culture where I have been trained? So if you want to do a building, it could be a family house, it could be an airport, which I've worked on before, it could be maybe a public building. You will approach an architect, I want to do a building. Then you give an architect what is called a brief. So the brief will tell the architect, if it is a residential building, okay, we tell them, okay, I have a family of 5 people in my family. We need a design. And what we want is, we want 2 living room spaces, we want a big dining, we want 2 car porches and things like that. So you explain all of this to the architect. And the architect will ask you, do you have a proposed land that you want to actually carry the development? Or do you want to buy? But let's assume you want to do your design in Florida. Maybe there's a new city coming up and there's a design that you like. So you tell the architect. So the architect then goes to the drawing board to make sketches and designs based on what you've told the architect in terms of this is what you want. And this is going to take a bit of processes of back and forward in terms of the dimensions of what you want, the kind of furniture you want. And for instance, so now we start getting into a bit of the environment. So the design I would do for somebody who is in Florida is not the same design I would do for somebody who is in Nigeria. And it is not the design I would do for somebody who is in South Africa. Why? Because the climate in those regions, they are different. For instance, in South Africa, we experience what is called the snow. But in Nigeria, there is no snow and all of that. So you consider all of this. So the architect will do the design. And at some point, the architect will actually need the services of all the people, like the structural engineer, the mechanical engineer, to assist in the design up until the point where the design will be completed. So you finish a good design, which the client is happy with. You get the input from the structural engineer in terms of the structure so that the house is structurally stable and civil engineering factors are considered. You get ideas and input from the mechanical and electrical engineer. And these are the people who come into your building and they'll be able to tell you, we need this number of switches. We need what is called the distribution board, where your power will be arranged. So in terms of, when you talk about the power, you talk about you need a cooker unit, you need television sets, you need PowerPoint and all of that. they'll be able to calculate the kind of load you will need in the house and all of that. You need the mechanical engineer, and they will come in and tell you, because of the kind of family you have, let's say family of 5 or 7, we need to have, let's say, 7 WCs, water closet, we need shower units, we need services. We need to think about your water recirculation in terms of hot water supply, cold water supply. We need to connect to the municipality or to the city for services and all of that. Again, at some point, you also need the cost and financial person. We call it the quantity surveyor. They are the ones that will give you a bit of quantities. They will now be able to tell you, okay, the project you are doing is going to cost you about $150,000. Are you sure you have that amount of money to do this project? Are you looking at getting a bond or a loan to continue the? So basically, in terms of the Western culture, you will approach an architect, you will tell them the brief, they will do the design. And in some other cases, some clients will tell you, look, architect Taiwo, I want to do a design, but what I want, actually I was in, let's say you were in India, you were in France, you were in UK, and you saw a beautiful design, and you want a replica of that design or something similar to that. In that way, your design will be conformed to what you have projected in terms of what you liked. You want a swimming pool and all of that. But today, I will now flip to the other side, and I'll be able to take questions later. And I'm sure you've done this in the course of I think the last week's class and today's. Talking about the vernacular architecture is actually defined as a different kind of architecture and construction part, whereby you basically use traditional materials and techniques and resources from the area where the building is located. Well, today we can still have a bit of vernacular architecture, but however, with modernization, a lot of things have changed, and we'll get a bit into that. So before then, in many places in Western Africa, for instance, and many parts of Africa, people will use the earth. Some people call it the mud. They will use timber, wood, and all of that. We'll get a bit into that. But now a lot of things have changed, and many people will not be able to understand where the vernacular architecture is coming into being. Again, another definition says it's actually done outside the academic traditions, which is the Western culture, without professional guidance, as it were. So where I come from, and I think I still have pictures, but I'm not able to show you the pictures today. I'm from Lagos, Nigeria, even though I've relocated, I moved to South Africa. I'm from a place called Ekpe, and I'm from Agbole Atekwete. That is where I'm from, in Lagos State. Is actually close to the waters. So we have a place called Agbole, like our own dwelling, Igatitiwa. So I'm speaking Yoruba and I'm speaking English. So that is a place where my 4 great-great-great-great-grandfathers lived, and the place is still existing up till now. And the last time I visited that was 2 years ago, or early last year. What we saw was that my great-great-great-grandfather's burial ground was still there, and I could see it where they were buried. So now, new modern culture, you can't bury your people in your houses. Some people do cremation, some actually, but way back in terms of vernacular architecture, sometimes these are part of the designs of the buildings where you could find tombstones of people, which is still there in where I come from in Ekpe local government, in Agbole Atekwete or Kebalogun, which is still existing. So in such a place, even though we've seen a bit of modernity, we still have a mixture of the vernacular architecture and a mixture of the Western culture, because times have changed. But you could still see places that shows that, look, these places were actually built with old materials that are found in that place. Okay, so when we reflect a bit about the importance of vernacular architecture, one of the things you find it actually talks about identity and heritage. What is our culture? What is our heritage? What do we love to do? And I will jump a bit, not in this particular, in terms of the vernacular architecture, there is a way we design from the Yoruba culture back at home. There is a way they design in the northern culture back in the northern part of Nigeria. They do a lot of, in terms of, you can't just go into the house. They have a lot of segregated parts, except you are the man of the house. There are places you can't get into such communities. But we, from the Western culture, the Yoruba culture back at home, we have our houses designed in such a way that we live in communal kind of environment, where sometimes we eat together, we do things together. So in terms of vernacular architecture, you talk about identity, you talk about heritage. a bit of historical background and values, the things we value so much. For instance, in the modern day world, if you go to a restaurant, if I'm eating at home today, I'll eat using my own plate. But way back, sometimes the entire family can eat together in one bowl. I remember there are times I eat with my father in the same bowl, but these are part of our values. And when you look at this, it also affects the architecture, the way the buildings were designed. Again, it speaks to sustainability and climate responsive design, and also to local environmental conditions in terms of climate change. So we'll look a bit at some of the maps later. So the kind of place where you live also affect the kind of materials you find readily available in terms of the climate and the environment. So it's easier for you to design your vernacular architecture based on what you can easily find, whether it is timber, whether it is earth, whether it is wood, or even straws, as it were. Then also, like I said, the materials will now be based on what is available, and the techniques and the method. We'll be able to look at a few of that, and of course, the communal dwelling. So again, in some Western culture, some of the cities were actually planned around where the king lives. Some of the markets, you find them close to where the king lives, which is called Ojaoba in Yoruba language. Even if you go to the Benin city, where you find out that the king's palace, the Oba's palace, is actually at the central location, and every other dwellings, the other chiefs, will be around such places. So West Africa, you can see it from my map. I hope it's showing over there. It's actually west part of Africa. Yeah. You can see it's not just one country. There are a couple of countries, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Nigeria, Senegal, Ghana, Lomé, and all of that. So these are the countries that make up West Africa. Okay, and you can see in terms of, okay, sorry. Let me go back a bit. One second. Okay. So in terms of climate, you can see there's some parts of West Africa, it's humid, some is dry. So where I come from in Nigeria, and maybe most part of Nigeria, we experience what is called the Harmattan season. That is sometime late in the year from November, December, up until January, sometime to February. Some parts you find it is so much of arid, some parts so much of, they experience a lot of rainfall. But the funny thing is, with climate change, a lot of things are changed. Things are not the way they used to be way back in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, and they have also affected the way we do our designs. And now you have to be conscious of energy in whatever you do. Vernacular architecture, like I said, spans across the whole of West Africa. I would have loved to give you a lot of things, but today, in the course of my preparing of the lecture, I lost a couple of files, but I can share them later. I can show you the books and all of. But this particular architecture, I don't know if you can, this design is actually from Mauritania, and you can see that the material is actually from earth. They use in building this. You can see timber from it, and you can see the craftsmanship of people. And how they've designed the entrance to this building, and you can look at the steps as well. But this is actually coming from a native environment of people, which is a beautiful design. But with modernization, many of all of this have been done away with, which is very sad, if you ask me. So I'm also showing that this is another design, looking at a design from the northern part of Nigeria, and which is different from the way we design in the south or in the western part as well. And here they pay a lot of attention on security. If you can see the plan on the left side, you can see the guard on the design, on the first drawing you can see. And for instance, the northern part, in terms of their design, if you go to such places and you are not careful, you could be attacked, because it is expected that it's only people who are part of the family that are expected to go beyond the main part of the house. And you can see, and again, you can see the beautiful craftsmanship from the drawings on the right part, on the right side of the slide. You can see it, the way this is done, using local materials, using the earth, using timber, and with men actually doing design themselves. Same thing. Okay, I'm sorry. You can look at the picture at the middle part with the white design on the wall. Don't know why the slide is moving by itself. Don't know why. I'm having some issues with my slide. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, let
We
me
can
see.
hear you.
Okay.
You are number 10.
Okay.
You are 9 now. One more. Okay,
Okay,
that's
10. So I was saying that look at this. This is from the northern part of Nigeria. It's a public building. And even the picture in the middle part, you can see the beautiful craftsmanship done with hands, talking about the local culture, talking about the people's heritage. But for many of all of this, with modernization and Western culture, they've actually changed the way things are done. And the picture on the right shows how some of these buildings are actually done. So they go to the earth, they actually go there, soften the earthen part, mix it with water, add a bit of what is called grass, and so that they will be able to make it in little by little, and they mold them, and eventually these are plastered, and craftsmanship is done using hands on these buildings. Again, this is somewhere in a place called Jos in Nigeria, but I'm just showing a few pictures of what people have done way back in the 60s, in the 50s. Beautiful designs, and this is how people lived way back. Again, this is actually the picture from the Benin Kingdom, above Benin's palace, way back. And you can see how that, even though we're, of course, this is 2024, way back in the 50s and 1940s, Africans had their way of doing their designs. They had their own way of designing the urban settlements, like I mentioned earlier, where the Oba's palace or the King's palace is centrally located, and every other place is borders or surrounds where the Oba lives, with maybe what is called the urban market, which is still existing in Edo State up until today. But you can see how that they have a way of doing their own designs, their balconies. If you look at the picture in the middle, the lower one, which is a nice veranda, you can see the well-crafted wooden balustrades, which is bordered upon by the roof, which is made from wooden straws from a bit of what is called a bamboo, and all of this. But with modernity again, many of these, they are no longer existing. I'll just stop here to take questions, like I've said, but we can see that there is a way we used to do things way back, and there's a way we do things now. Thank you very much. Let me stop here for now. Yes.
okay. Thank you very much. That's been a fantastic summary of what we have been working on since last week. And we've read a number of articles, watched 2 videos, one a 2-minute video talking about all of the things that you have mentioned. But my first question, before I allow the first students present to ask the questions if they have any, is you talked about the Western style architecture. You get a base, you design, and then it's built. But in the African way, do they also do design, or they build? How do they build, in fact? How do they put up the structures? In
Okay.
your Atagbele,
Okay.
yes, how was it? Could you have gone back now to do a design of what is there if you wanted to? But when they were doing it, was there a design, a plan, or how? Could you expatiate a little bit on how the houses were built?
Thank you very much. So way back and up until now, even in some parts of where there are places, what you usually find is you have some masonries who have done this work over time, who understand how these things are done. And so what you find is people who are novices, who don't know anything, they could approach these people and tell them, look, I need a design for my family. I want to do something, they will tell them. So it's also similar to that kind of a brief. But what they will now do is to now tell them, look, I have this land. It was given to me by my fathers, or it was given, that's my own allocation. And this is what I want to do. So they will use their body wise and say, look, when you enter my compound, what I want to do is like, when you enter my compound, I want to have a well on the right side of the compound. I want my bedroom to be on this side. They will explain, sometimes using leg. So then there were no measuring tape as well. Sometimes we use our legs to do measurements, even up until now. So I can go to a site and take measurement without using a physical. So I know that one span of my leg is about 1 meter. So they could tell them, I want the span of the room to be like 4 span of my legs by 5 span of my leg. I want this place to be where the courtyard is. So what they usually would do is to get somebody who has done it over time and explain to them on the same land and tell them, look, this is what I want to do in this Agbole, in this location. I want to have a place with 5 rooms, with 4 rooms. I want a place where we can use for conveniences. So way back, most of the designs there, you don't have the conveniences and the rooms together. Most times the conveniences and the kitchen will be located at the rear side of the building, of the compound. So the frontal part of the design of the building, whichever way, is where you welcome your visitors. And most times the older people or the fathers we have is in the front, where they tell their tales or stories to the children in the evenings. So most of the designs way back did not follow the former way. But what we knew was that people knew what they wanted. And also at that time, you find what is called incremental building, where somebody could say, look, I want to do 10 rooms. Some of them had many wives, or they had 2 at the beginning. So I want to start with having 2 rooms for my 2 wives and large rooms for the children. I want to have a courtyard and all of that. And that is how they do the designs. And with time, some of them who were so rich at that time, they could say, I want Leoloke Biji, Leoloke Kan. Up until now, I lived in places when I was young, where I lived in places where such buildings were made of wood and timber. People who are crafted in how to cut wood, they were able to cut and do all those buildings. So, and people were able to use a mixture of timber and earth, which is clay, baked clay, to actually do their design. So way back then, there were no Western. So the brief will just explain to the person who does the work, who is the masonry, as the case may be. I want 2 rooms, I want 3 rooms, and you can explain and demonstrate with your body and your leg measurement the size of the room. So sometimes you do the marks on the floor, and they can now do a bit of what is called foundation, where they dig a bit, and they can now use signposts to actually do the design. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Okay. Does anybody have a question? Okay. All right. Nobody has a question. We'll just wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It's 19 minutes past 1. Class ends at 1:30. I would use the remaining portion of the time to talk to what we are going to do. But on a final note, I know that you talked about materials, and you talked about bamboo, you talked about clay from earth, you talked about even grass being mixed with the clay. But do they ever use things like glass? No, now we have most of our windows, you have them as glass windows. And I think in one of the things I saw, people have wooden doors. Now, how durable, compared with today, you as a Western architect, how durable are the materials the Africans used in their time? Clay versus cement that we use these days, concrete. How would you compare both?
So we had very durable materials. I think at this point I will stop sharing, and I can show you the pictures I will have put on this slide. But let me say this. Part of the problem we have in the world today when people talk about climate change is actually coming, I think 40% of the issues around climate change is actually coming from the construction industry, in the making of cement, in the making of glass, because we use a lot of carbon and a lot of energy in doing that. At that time, there were no things like glasses. So most of the windows and the ones I saw in some of the documented work, the research I did, they use more of, sometimes they had open windows. In some other cases, they had wooden windows. They were well designed. Let me see if, okay, I've stopped sharing, but let me, I'm coming. Let me see if I can just share straight. Okay. Can you see my slide at the moment, or is not showing? Hello, Prof, can you see my slide? No, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Hello? Can you
Okay, I
hear
can
me
hear you now.
Yeah, I said, is this what is called the lattice, where you have the wood dispersed with clay?
Can you see my slide before I continue?
Yes, we can. Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm just going to show a couple of pictures and to actually show you the materials used. These are some of them. Some of them are actually grasses in layers for them to build way back. This is earthwork. Can you see the making of trusses, even for roof, using bamboo and being tied together for them to be able to couple all of this together?
Yeah.
Same thing. You can see men working, and this is how, even when they are going to make roofs with domes and all of that, you can see men working on palms.
Palm fronds. Yeah.
Yes, all of this in layers, those are what they use in making roofs. These were sustainable, and they were able to withstand the weather at that time. There were nothing like glasses. We didn't have glasses. We didn't have all that. And people knew how to use them over time, and they actually served people. You can see men working on all of this. You can see people taking out times, and some of these they were also used in making what is called fences way back. These are craftsmanship from people's handiwork at that time. Sorry, I apologize for the pictures. This is Mbari architecture way back somewhere in Barry houses. You can see how people have done. So you can't see glasses in all of this. But they had openings for the places to be well ventilated, for there to be ventilation in such buildings. Same thing. You can see the smaller wooden cuts from like sort of fences for the houses. Raffia palms and all of that, you can see this is actually somewhere in Onitsha, in eastern part of Nigeria. So I'm just showing this, but to answer, I've answered your question, there were nothing like that. So sometimes you had openings for people to ask, so there were no glasses at that time. If you still want more, I can show you. So these were the northern designs. Okay, let me stop sharing. Okay, yeah.
Okay, well, I think, okay, to a great extent, you sort of answered the question of sustainability, that the materials they use was very eco-friendly.
Yes.
And if the building was destroyed, it would just go back to earth. One of the things I'll be discussing will be the cost of all of this, cost of labor, and like you showed, most of it were done by neighbors who came to assist in the building. Well, thank you very much for taking time. I know it's quite late in South Africa. It's probably, is it 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock?
It's 7:25 p.m.
Okay, 7:25. We are still, this is 1:25 here. So it's still afternoon. I guess it's time for dinner over there. Thank you very much. And
are you ending the class now?
I would just wrap it up, but
So I can listen to the.
Okay,
I apologize
all right.
for coming late. So the Zoom
No,
link
no
you sent
problem.
actually showed me 1 hour ahead. So yes. There's no sound from my side.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you
Hello?
now. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, good. I was just trying to get my materials
Okay.
for the what we did last week. What I'm going to be talking about is look at the paper, the article we're supposed to read, and then I also, yeah, this is I have given out copies of this, but let me run very quickly to the assignment. The class assignment that was started in the last class. Let me see, I'm sure I can also share my screen. Okay, that's it. Yeah. Can you see my, okay, good. So we've defined that. What I didn't talk about the last time was what you have been reading about urbanization. And I have gone ahead to copy for you what all of that means. In the discussion paper some of you wrote, there was no tying in of what does the economic have to do with the dwelling places. You cannot write a discussion paper without a title. And if you write the title and it does not correspond with what you are discussing, then there is no way in which I can know. You already put a title there, but when I read the passage, there's no correspondence. You cannot have a discussion paper without a title telling us what you want to discuss. It's a discussion paper, meaning you can look at what one author said and what another said. They sometimes are not in agreement, but you bring them together in a discussion. Then there are no experts in architectural experts. There are issues that you can take. Summers is not an architect. He's a social scientist. But there are issues in social science that has to do with living spaces. And he was talking about urbanization. What does it mean? And we talked about that the African continent, there's rapid urbanization, meaning the movement and migration from the rural area to the city. And when they get to the city, most of the time they cannot afford the cost of living spaces, which means that they will set up their own, like what you call ghettos. They will set them up, and it will be what people call an eyesore. Because you find these very good buildings, and then you have these locally made materials from whatever they can find. So let me just quickly take you through what this whole thing about urbanization is. You don't just pull it in, you can find out yourself what it means. Rapid urbanization in Africa refers to the swift migration of people from rural areas to cities. What are the rural areas? I've always, if you read the syllabus, and from the way things are going, apparently it doesn't look as if anybody has had time to look at the syllabus. It talks about the differences in locations. And what I asked you to do in the assignment I don't want anybody to choose the capital city. Have a sense of cities outside of the capital of the country you're choosing. Why is that? This class is about the African continent, and usually they set out the geography, whereby they give you a map and ask you to label the countries. I thought that was too childish. That instead, why don't I make it practical? Instead of just knowing that there's a place in Botswana, and we know that there's a place called Blantyre, you can find out cities that are around the place. What is the internet has answers to all of us. So you get to learn a place firsthand. And in the presentation, when there's a presentation, instead of the usual discussion paper, where we're going to be presenting different topics based on what you have submitted to me. And your classmates will be hearing about those places, about those countries, and learning about it. If we have 5 of you here, and we talk about 2, that's 10 out of 54 of the countries. So you need to understand that there's a movement from rural setting to the cities. And why do they move to the cities? Because in most of the rural areas, they're not industrialized. There are no employment opportunities. There are no health opportunities. So they move there with the hope of finding work. And when you talk about youth bulge, what does that have to do with housing? Is it that the youth bulge of people who have moved from the rural area to the city, why are they there? And why is there a bulge? We're talking about population, we're talking about pressure. The government cannot provide housing for everybody. So there is the private capitalists are the ones who will build the houses, but they are not Father Christmas. They build it in order to make a profit. So people who don't have jobs, where are they going to live? Or how can they live? So you need to be able to critically think about how do these things link? And one paragraph and the next, there must be a link. You can't just copy one thing and then put the next. That's not a discussion paper. Okay. So there's a breakdown of the key points when it comes to the unprecedented pace at which urbanization happens. Compared to historical urbanization patterns worldwide, if you ever read the Bible, there's something called Exodus. Exodus is talking about the first movement of the people. They moved from one place, and people leave due to various reasons. They could move because of persecution, they could move because of economics, they could move because of climate change. When the Irish left where they were, and they came in thousands to America because there was a potato blight there. They were almost going to start to death, and they came here. And they were treated just like Black people were treated in those days. Now they've been assimilated into the culture. So we need to understand that urbanization is not just peculiar to the African continent, but all over the world there has been movement from different places. So Africa's urban growth is exponentially rapid. So it's not like 1 + 1 is equal to 2. It's sometimes 2, and then 4, and then 6. So it's like double, triple, and quadruple, and it just goes on like that in leaps and bounds. There's also what is called the push and the pull factors. Several factors contribute to this rapid shift, whereby people from the rural area will come to the city. People are often pushed out of rural areas due to factors like limited economic opportunities, environmental degradation, lack of access to essential services like banking, health. They're all part of it. Like in these places, they don't have it. And when you look at the way the rural areas in Africa is spread, you have them in almost isolation of each other. They're fragmented. But if you're going to have a shopping mall, you don't want to have a shopping mall for 200 people. You want to have a shopping mall where 200,000 people can have access to it. But because of the nature of these villages and grassroots places, they scattered. There's no central place. Unlike the cities. In the cities, you will establish it in a place where people have access to it, and they can get to it, and they can spend money, and they can buy, and you can make a profit. Okay, there's the uneven distribution, the way in which the place is arranged. What of the impact of rapid urbanization, right? It has both positive and negative. There are also challenges. But finally, let me leave that. You have it there, you can look at it. Today's class, last week's class, the assignment, using any of the search engines, Google, Yahoo, whatever search engine, meaning a place where you can type in something and find the information. Find out the type of climate in the 2 countries you chose last week. We started it in class, you all have it. If you don't have it, please send to me, I'll send you the prompts again. You need to find out where you have chosen outside of the capital. How safe in terms of security, climatic disasters like drought, flooding, intense heat, and dust haze. All of this, if you ask the internet, you will get answers from the particular location that you have chosen. What does the search engines say are the major causes of the disasters? There are some of the environmental disasters that are caused by human beings. They are the ones who go to cut down the trees. You remember when architect Taiwo was talking, he said something about energy. In your house, in a modern house, you need to determine your source of energy. Even in the one you want to build, you have to think, what is the source of energy you want to use? Do you want to use solar? Do you want to join the national grid? In South Africa, there's now something called load shedding. I want you to think outside of the box, and I want you to be able to turn in a paper to me that shows that you know the place as good as you can with the limitation of the internet. And there are so many places you can have that will tell you and deliver these answers to you. So, number 5, what are the common construction materials in the country you chose? It's not all of it. They don't have all of it. You might have to import. You might have to bring in your furniture from Italy. It's fine. Be as imaginative as you can be. Remember, this is the first time you are actually thinking of building a house for yourself, and you want to give a brief. How do you intend to construct the structure you have chosen? We've gone through it all. He's told us all of the persons that are involved: the structural engineer, the civil engineer, the electrical and mechanical, the quantities of your. How do you want to build yours? I have given you prompts. You want to use a local contractor, or work with the university architecture department, invite builders from another location, and so on and so forth. Give reasons for your choice. Why did you decide on what you have decided upon? How can you find out the values and cultural traditions of the people in the location you have chosen? If you choose Botswana, who are the ethnic groups in Botswana? And number 10, what lessons would you want your house to pass across? It's a very important part of it, because houses say things. What do you want your house to say? The culture, your person. Do you want them to look at the house and say, this is an American that has just come, and it's not part of us? Or this is somebody who has come and respects who we are and wants to be a part of us. So that is my class for today. Those are the questions, and I would, if you don't have it, if you have any problem going through any of it, just write me. I have also copied from the internet the article from Architectural Review. The link is there. The name of the person is there. and that will do it. If I send you a comment on your discussion paper and I've not put a grade, you still have a choice to redo it and resubmit it. But if you don't want to, just say put a grade and I'll just put the grade. But I don't see that in the university setting, you can write a paper without an article. And who are you citing? You can't just put a list of this. Where is it? In all the papers we read, look at it. And then if you have any questions, please ask me. But check. I do two things. I put it on Canvas and I send it to your email. If you don't get it, check your Canvas. Thank you very much. I'll see you on Tuesday. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much.
I want to carry to win the presentation.
Okay. You have to stop the recording. Okay.
Okay.